Hey, 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 people are joining in. The ticker is going up.
Nice.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They're coming in fast, John. They're coming in fast.
You know why? Because you're awesome. That's why. Everybody wants to learn from you, which I do. I'm actually looking forward to this in a pretty significant way. You know how I feel about building culture of companies. It's everything, right? And so if you don't have it, especially in the beginning, you're in trouble, right? It's crazy because especially with the economy and everything going on, people have to rally, and it takes a great culture to be able to rally the troops, if you will, and get everybody on the same page without getting into too many of my Red McCombs media stories. 2008 and 2009 were incredibly rough because the economy went crazy bad, and we rallied, and we actually ended up having our best year ever in 2009 while everybody else was struggling. And that's because we had a great team, great culture. It took a while to build that, though, right? It took all the things that you're going to talk about today are incredibly important. And I lived it twice and really had to learn it the hard way the first time, right? And the second time is much easier because I had learned a lot of the principles that you're going to talk about today. And so, yeah, I'm really excited about it because I believe that it is the key to pretty much everything you're going to do.
By all means, and with such a fast-paced environment that we have today, just giving people a shortcut, not having to spend years learning how to do this, but even a new leader being able to have kind of a hack, if you will, to develop their
No,
people.
so true. It's funny because we live in such a tech world, and both the companies I built were tech companies. And my biggest takeaway over the last 20 years of building tech companies is that the tech's important, but without the right people to build the tech and to function at a high level and have a high level of productivity on a human level, um, none of it really matters.
I know folks will probably still trickle in, but especially because we have senior leadership on the line, I would be mindful of everyone's time and really treat this more like an executive committee meeting where we're going to go down and dirty with what you need to know. We'll save questions till the end. We do have the chat and the Q&A function open for folks who want to submit their questions in advance. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the CEO Imperative, aligning your people strategy with your talent strategy. Why would you do this? Because it has been proven to increase both productivity and profitability, the things that we are most mindful of in this current economic climate. So hello, I am Robinson. I'm your host today. I am a certified professional in talent development and master performance consultant. I live in the Bay Area with my husband and my Siberian Huskies. Some things that I like to do. Basketball is my favorite sport. Go Warriors. And I love to read. I love good stories, even if it's in the form of a movie or an audiobook or coffee time with my friends. And love to travel. Getting out and seeing the world is one of my favorite things, just to continue to expand my horizons. I've been doing this for about 20 years, mostly in corporate roles before I branched out and started to try and help more businesses do better by their people, and for their business on my own. So there's really usually 3 types of people that come to this event, and we only do this event a couple times a year. So if you're here, congratulations, because you are going to have a competitive edge that those who chose to do something differently at this hour will not get. Usually you have some type of a concern about turnover, attrition, or maybe some stale performance concerns, or the chance that there may be some performance concerns. And then there's a whole nother group, which I love, and that's the type of leader that is just wired in their DNA to leave nothing to chance. And when you learn about a new strategy, you're all over it. That's very much like my friend, John Flatt, who's joining me on the call today. John, thank you so much for being here. For those of you who may not know John, he is a prior CEO of Red McCombs and also Curve Interactive. He's also a serial entrepreneur. So he has been on the front end of starting and on the back end of bringing it home. John, thank you for joining us today.
It's truly my pleasure. And we've known each other a while and we've talked shop quite a bit. And I've been very lucky and blessed to build two very large companies, the first one from the ground up. And what you're going to learn today in this webinar and what you're going to go through is vitally important to the growth of any business. It took me a while to figure all these things out in my youth, but we live in a world that is very hectic at this point. The economy is bad. And rallying the troops and getting everybody to work together for a common cause is tremendously important in this day and age. And so Ronda and I have had great conversations about all this content. And I am just a firm believer that productivity and success comes through culture. And I believe in effective communication, mutual accountability, and mutual respect, which everything you're going to see today leads to that kind of culture. So I'm just happy to be here. Thank you, Ronda, for having me.
You bet. Thanks again, John. Knowing that everybody has different schedules and different ways that they like to communicate, maybe you're a little bit more of a private communicator when it comes to what's going on in your organization. So I'm dropping in the chat, and I will a couple times during this, a direct link to my calendar. So if you'd like to have a follow-up conversation about anything that we covered today, my inbox and calendar is now open. So let's talk about really what the issues are today. And one of the things that as executives you like to do is metrics. So let's talk about the cost of turnover and disengaged employees. It's literally costing companies millions. Unfortunately, we tend to think of that as a line item, just cost of doing business. But I'd like to showcase really how much money you could be redeploying into your business, whether it's new R&D, leadership development, new technology, whatever it is that you need to find cash for, because also getting cash from investors right now is a little lean. So let's see where we can find you some money. So this comes from Gallup, and Gallup says that the average cost of replacing an employee is between 50% to 2 times their average salary. So in our first example here, for hourly workers at $15 an hour, they have an average salary of $28,000 a year. If you have a 20% turnover rate times half their salary, and that's just the floor, that's $14,000 times 200 employees, that's $2.8 million. With hourly workers, boom, you're already in the millions. That's easy to calculate. What some folks don't calculate as often and should is cost of disengagement. Again, Gallup comes to us with some data that suggests that right now about 2/3 of the workforce is disengaged to some degree, with 16% being actively disengaged. Well, if we look at 2/3 of the hourly employees, and it costs 18% of their salary for disengagement, and in some sense they're not working 1/5 of the time to their full potential, that's actually costing you more than actual turnover. So the cost of disengagement is something that we really need to be paying attention to. And if you add the two together, those who leave plus the ones that stay, you're now more than doubling what your attrition cost was. Let's take a different example of salaried workers. Again, 1,000 employees, and let's say they have an average salary of $100,000, even a lower attrition rate at 15%, because we're looking at 50% of their average salary, you're now $7.5 million in turnover. I know you know what's coming next. How much is disengagement costing? This quiet quitting that is everywhere you turn today, whether it's in print, it's in videos, it's on the news. Quiet quitting is disengagement. And you can quickly get into 11, almost $12 million collectively. That's almost $20 million. $20 million just for 1,000 employees. So there's money to be found if we can solve for this problem. The problem is it's getting bigger. This chasm between employees and employers, Part of it's because of the media stirring the pot, but social media, everyone's piling on. The employees are thinking, they're quitting. They're thinking about remote work. They're demanding better compensation. They're demanding recognition programs. They want more personal development, the DE&I initiatives that are going on. They're asking for greater work-life balance and empathy. And I know leaders are doing their best everywhere they can to try and plug the gaps in these areas. But you know what? You've also got your day jobs to do. Some folks are trying to recover from the pandemic still. You've got productivity concerns. Maybe we're not in a recession. You're thinking about, do you need to adjust your goals? Do you need to adjust your budgets? Maybe you have, or you're thinking about adjusting your head count. And so the thought of taking on one more project, talent optimization, may have you thinking, no, thanks. We're too busy doing all of these other things. Well, let's think about what you can gain and what you can actually maybe offset or trade in some of these other efforts and how you're spending money for those things that the employees are asking for. When you embark on a talent optimization strategy, and any size company can do this, our clients are looking at incredible improvements in their organization and hiring process, and actually level setting and helping to remove some bias and subjectivity from their hiring, achieving stronger employee engagement, a direct line of sight for coaching and developing their employees. And we're going to come back and circle to this in just a little bit. And when you compare those who adopt a talent optimization strategy, they are outpacing their competitors by double digits. And how do they get there? Higher employee performance, greater increase in getting their shots on goal and in achieving their milestones. 3 times better retention of their best employees, their high-performing employees. 33% less time dealing with people problems. There's a win right there. And for those who look to Glassdoor and other ratings, thinking that it can affect your brand and your perception in the marketplace, improving those scores as well. Now, you probably are thinking, oh, it's going to take a lot of time and money to get this done. Well, the good news, this is absolutely within your reach. This will shock you. You can create a talent strategy that's aligned with your business strategy in less than an hour. If you partner with the right people who have the right technology and the right validity behind their offering. And you can do it, almost all companies can do this for less than the cost of one turnover or one disengaged employee. 1 hour and one employee. And you saw everything that you have to gain. Now you can do this by yourself. By all means, there are talented people out there that have figured this out. You know who those people are, those great people managers in your organizations, those amazing HR strategists that are in your organization. But think about this, they also have a job to do, and they're one person. So how can you make this scalable and sustainable in your organization? I'm going to give you some steps that you can take right now. You don't need me to come in and fix this right now. You can start to do some things now during this call. And I'm going to warn you, you've already seen I talk fast. We've got a lot of visuals and we're going to move fast. So close down your email, whatever you're doing. We got a lot of things coming your way, but you're going to need to be able to snap these QR codes and or take down these links in order to get these tools. All right, so these include an exclusive one-on-one talent strategy session with me, and I'm actually going to put my calendar link in the chat again. And that includes if you decide it's a fit for you. After our conversation, you may or may not. That's okay. We want to give you a free trial and see how this would show up in your organization. All right, are you ready? Set, go. The first free tool that we're going to offer you, this is something that you should be doing anyway, is a cost of turnover calculator. The numbers that I gave you was just back of the napkin cost. That is just based on a floor of 50% of an employee's salary. But there's other things that you can add into the mixture. Is this a revenue generating role? How long does it take to fill that position? How many days does it take to fill a position, etc.? So you can either go to this link or just snap the QR code and download the cost of turnover calculator. And this will give you a good sense of where you need to be paying attention in your organization and rethinking possibly how you're spending whatever dollars that you have in order to address organizational issues. So let's talk about what is talent optimization. It's the strategic process of maximizing your results. How? By optimizing not only the performance of your people, but the experience of individuals, teams, and organizations. And if you would like to learn more about what that means, there is a state of talent optimization report that has input from over 300 CEOs in how they're utilizing talent optimization and the results that they're getting by applying this strategy in their organization. So again, you can snap the QR code and or find it at the link in the bottom right-hand corner of the slide. So what do we mean by optimal outcomes? And we said it's combining performance with employee experience. So if you have a low performance, low experience team, no surprise, that's a toxic environment. Nothing's getting done and no one's having fun. We move to the upper left-hand side where maybe things are getting done, but it's a bad experience. People are frustrated. They're not having a good time. They resent going to work or they resist going to work. On the bottom right-hand side, hey, maybe this is a great place to work. And we hear that a lot. Hey, we have a great culture. It's a great place to work, but the numbers aren't coming in, or maybe they're just not as good as they could be. This is the cheerleader organization. Everybody wants to work there because it's a blast and people are nice, but somebody has to be accountable for getting the work done. And that's where when you combine the two, you end up in this optimal state of high performance and high experience. So when we look at how people are approaching this today, no surprise, there's a lot of effort and a lot of time and money that go into developing the business strategy with the intent that it will translate into expected business results, some specific metrics that you've laid out to know that you've succeeded. In the middle are the people who do the work. And usually a talent strategy stops at an org chart and job descriptions. We need someone in marketing to do these things. We need a salesperson to do these things, et cetera, et cetera. But really, we're missing out on this. How do you get performance, maximal performance, and how do you create a high enjoyable experience or fulfilling experience? Let's take a look at what happens when these are amiss. If you don't have your talent strategy right, you risk missing out on your targets, those metrics that we talked about. If you get the business strategy wrong, you run the risk of execution not being on point. Similarly, if you are in the middle and you're just looking at talent as an org chart, people to fill seats based on their skills and experience, the roles that they're assigned to do, you're forgetting that there is a people tax to pay. Because people who are not in the right role, it takes a lot more energy, a lot more time, and a lot more effort for them to do the job. And when those things happen, they start to get disengaged or they quit. And so you're paying this people tax along the way. So even if your company is doing fine, if your business unit is doing fine, are they doing as well as they could be? Are they full on in that green, optimal performance, optimal experience quadrant? And right now, in our economic climate, with all of the forces that are coming in on our employees today, every employee needs to count. And that's where talent optimization can really make a difference, is getting the most out of your employees on a daily basis. So how do we do that? Well, you know what? Every business problem is a people problem. And if we peel back the org chart and the job descriptions, and we get strategic about how we deploy people on an individual level and in teams, it comes down to a couple of things. Number one is design. This is where we align your business objectives in the next 6, 12 to 18 months, depending on your team and your goals, with the people that are going to do the work, and assembling this A team, if you will. If you go back to the A team, the TV series and the movie, that's how you're finding the best people for the right role, which is in hiring. So designing your team and hiring people or placing people on your team that are naturally gifted and oriented to do the work that's asked of them. And then in the middle, it's inspiring them. With all of the organizational changes that are going on, reorganizations, mergers and acquisitions, even as high growth companies grow and expand, people get shuffled. And managers find themselves over and over in the starting blocks with a new person on their team, trying to figure them out. How are they wired? How can I best serve them? How do they like to be managed? And vice versa, with employees trying to get to know new leaders. And so bridging that and giving you if you will, we're going to come to this again later, a people instruction manual for everyone on your team, and lining them up against the business objectives in a way that they naturally do work best, is when you're really going to see results in that performance and experience quadrant. And then periodically, we need to take a step back as companies change, evolve, your strategy changes, your team changes, as marketplace conditions change, and do a diagnosis, and then come back to this same circle and revisit this periodically. So what happens when we align both business strategy and talent strategy? You get to simplify what seems to be very complex talent issues. You get to see high productivity because you are taking away a coefficient of drag, of friction due to misalignment, both of who's doing the work, among the people doing the work, and versus the overall business goals. And all of that wrapped in a bow means that you have now increased confidence in the ability of the team to execute on time and in a way that's meaningful. So let's take just a moment and step back and talk about, how do you get the business strategy right? Yep, I said it. There's a lot of time and effort and money that goes into getting business strategy right. And we're doing a good job today. I just want to give you a couple of things that you might want to think about a little bit differently. Is the business strategy explicit? Is it agreed upon? And here's the new part. Number 2, agreed upon. Sometimes we don't always realize we don't have agreement, but the framed in people terms. Framed in people's terms. We tend to talk about business strategy in very technical terms. But if we can rethink business strategy in a way that connects the dots with the people doing the work, it becomes much more clear what's expected of folks and how we get there. So let's talk about the 4 types of strategic activities. There's 4 different quadrants, and most of your business objectives are going to fall in one of these 4 quadrants. This quadrant is typical, the exploring quadrant, when you're a startup company, you're a startup division, or you're embarking on something new to develop, create, or launch in your company. So you're thinking about new opportunities. You have to be nimble and it's fast paced. You have to take some risk, be willing to experiment, and think about, how are we bringing something new and unique forward? On the other side It's cultivating, and it's cultivating the employees and cultivating people relationships. Success looks like high employee engagement and participation. And I know I talk with a lot of, and I've been with a lot of startup companies who say, we can't pay attention to these, touchy-feely employee development stuff because we're busy just inventing and getting off the ground. And that happens. Just know where in the quadrant, where in the life cycle that you are, and then what your business priorities are as they evolve. The next is stabilizing. So this is where you take what you have and you're starting to get efficiencies built in so that you have some predictability of how the work is done. You can still be in an entrepreneurial space, a startup space, a growth mode space, but you're going to be very selective on what your choices are in where you're putting your efforts. And you're looking at coaxing higher performance out of what you have already built and start to forge customer loyalty. And then the last one is producing. All right, this is when we get to show what we've done for our efforts. And you're looking at expanding, accumulating more clients, building your reputation, getting more competitive. Maybe there's some competitive essence to what you're doing with price or positioning. And you're looking at building high market penetration and market share. So if you can think about your strategy, your business strategy in these 4 quadrants, now you can start to align where you need to point your people efforts. And this is how it's a little bit different than your typical list of business strategies in technical terms. So when we work with clients, we have a checklist of things that we ask. What are your strategic imperatives in the next either 6 to 12 months or 12 to 18 months? And based on those top 4, 5, 6 priorities, then we can actually map those to your current team. But first, it's important to gain agreement. And I'm going to show you in 2 case studies where an unknowing lack of agreement just started at the top and caused a little bit of confusion, and people thought they were in alignment before we did this exercise. So just to give you a couple of examples, we had executive team members, there were 4 that all 100% were in agreement that they needed to drive employees to achieve results with vision and passion. They also had 100% agreement that they had some new systems that they needed to implement. But when we talked about fostering and cultivating creativity for a new vision for the company, some said yes and some said no. And imagine if you're starting at the executive level where, oh, surprise, we didn't know how much this was a priority, how the trickle down layer after layer in the organization could dilute the efforts. So the successful talent optimization approach is making sure, A, that the strategy is explicit, it is agreed upon, and it's framed in people terms. But that's not all. We still have a piece that we need to add to this, and that is alignment of the talent and the strategy, because if you don't, then you can still have issues. So what do we mean by that? So we just discussed the 4 quadrants of the world of work and how the business strategy shows up. Well, when you do behavioral assessments, in other words, how people are naturally oriented to do work, you see profiles that show up in these different quadrants. And so when you have a profile that is oriented to be more innovative, being very risk tolerant, and wanting creativity and a lot of variety, those are the people that you want working on those initiatives. What we see a lot of times, especially in startup companies, is they start with these types of personalities. And as the company evolves, we go around the clock into the stabilizing and producing quadrants of business priorities, and now they're unhappy. A lot of this stuff is process oriented, and it is getting systems in place, and they want variety, they want to build, they want to create, and it's no longer fun for them, or it's a lot more effort for them to do these types of jobs. And this is getting into and leading into how to really match your talent strategy with your business strategy. Now, the fun part too is that there are a few profiles who sit in the middle, and they're very adaptable and can navigate through all 4 quadrants much easier than some of the other profiles. So let's talk about a high-tech startup case. This is one of my favorites. So this was an executive team, and they came out of the gates blazing, came to market with a phenomenal product, and they had wild success. And as a startup company is, they're fast moving, a lot of change. And then they stalled, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. Their sales targets were off. The finger pointing started to happen. The board got a little concerned. The investors started chipping away at their stock. And then the employees started getting frustrated. They're like, this company doesn't know what they're doing. I'm out of here. And so we worked with them and mapped their executive team, again, using this very quick 6-minute behavioral assessment. And this is the executive team. So in the red is the CEO. In this quadrant over here is the CFO, no surprise, process and precision. And over here is HR, no surprise, teamwork and employee experience. And the other executive team members, no surprise, it's a startup company. Many of the executives were in this innovation and agility. They're building, they're creating. And we tend to hire people who kind of look like us. So that's the makeup of the executive team. So we have a fast-paced maverick leader who's very tolerant of risk, loves to build, loves to innovate. And because we have someone over here saying, wait a minute, we need these processes, we need to pressure test these, there was a little bit of friction going on with the CFO. Notice the gap in the results and discipline domain. There wasn't anyone who was naturally wired to do that kind of work. Now, I want to pause for just a moment and clarify something that always, just because your profile lives in a domain does not restrict you to that type of work. Anyone can stretch one domain left or right. If you're conscious, that's where you need to pay attention. And some do it more agilely than others. It is harder for someone to stretch into the opposite domain. That's usually where most friction comes, most employee dissatisfaction comes, is when you're asked to do work that is opposite of your natural strengths and your natural desires. So we sat down with the executive team and asked them to characterize what their top 5 strategic priorities are for the next 12 to 18 months. And the specific ones that they chose are not necessarily important. What we do, though, is we map this visually on the world of work. And you can see that the emphasis of where they need to go to be successful in their business is in this results and discipline domain, with a little bit yet to be done in innovation and agility. So once you recognize that, just that self-awareness alone made them have a purposeful focus on what needs to be done and how to let go some of the things that they were working on in this quadrant. With this establishment of clear goals, now they were better able to collaborate. Both sides could say, here is where we need to be focusing our attention, and we are committed to doing that. But they still needed to stretch a little bit, leaders in one quadrant on either side, to get this work done. And interestingly, they were in the glide path to hire an operations leader. They had 5 people that were in the interview process. Their top 2, when we administered the behavior assessment prior to interviewing, showed they lived up here. Again, we tend to hire people that look like us, right? Behave like us. And their next 2 were internal referrals. And they were very excited about those folks as well. Again, they did not live in the domain where they needed to have work done. This was their 5th candidate, an unknown to them. And by taking this behavioral assessment, and by the way, the assessment in the interview process comes with behavioral interview questions to help tease out if this person is the right fit for the role. It was discovered that yes, this person, the 5th choice in our traditional way of hiring, is our best choice, knowing the work that needs to be done and the type of work that needs to be done. So hiring a new team member to help fill that gap and to do work naturally where these others had to stretch was the right decision for them. So how did that work out for them? Well, in 6 months, they saw a 19% increase in sales, reestablished their investor confidence, reduced involuntary turnover, and improved their Glassdoor ratings. Now, of course, we did this exercise for teams layers down. It wasn't just with the executive team, but this is the power of aligning each team's talent strategy with the business strategy and knowing who to task with getting the work done. Let's take another look at a manufacturing company. So their situation was they were experiencing high turnover, especially with their hourly line workers. 66% turnover. Employees were leaving for $1 more. So increasing the compensation wasn't even working for them. They started to get a reputation of a bad place to work. And because they didn't have the people to do the work, they started having production issues, quality issues, safety issues, and lots of friction on the team and losing money. So same exercise. Now this was the production management team, not the executive team. And when we looked at who's on the team, oh, they're manufacturing. So no surprise, a lot of it in the process and precision and the results and discipline domains, because that's a lot of the work that needed to be done. So we have this results-oriented leader and a team who is highly focused on tight process and by the book, which makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? But really a big gap in the people part, in the teamwork and collaboration domain. And that's where you can see now, oh, that's where we're really falling short. So again, by mapping their top strategic priorities, what do we need to accomplish in the next 6 to 12 months or 12 to 18 months? A lot of it fell in this teamwork and employee experience, but no one was naturally wired to do that. So huge emphasis here. This is what they needed to achieve at their company. So again, you can stretch one way or another, one domain left or right. So teaming up this person and this person, stretching one domain over to start driving these new employee initiatives, asking someone to come up with a program, and then just because you're in this domain doesn't mean you don't have something to contribute. Once the idea is created, now this process and precision team was able to put in the infrastructure to carry out this new playbook. So how did it work out for them? Again, in 6 months, reduced attrition by 50%. Production went up by 20%. They started actually poaching employees from the competition without an increase in pay. And their talent optimization investment was 10 times the return. So some pretty powerful things. So the alignment is key. Alignment is key. You've got to align your business strategy with the talent strategy. Make sure that your leadership behaviors are aligned with the work that needs to be done, and trickle down to the team behaviors being aligned with the work that needs to be done. You can do all of this through technology. A lot of times technology feels very anti-human. It seems like you're taking away the humanity by using technology. But when you use the right technology, you can actually let it do the heavy lifting, let it do the large thinking for you, become more scalable, more sustainable within your organization. And remember, I told you that you can get your talent strategy set in less than an hour for way less than the cost of just one disengaged employee. So Start reducing turnover in days, start improving your goal attainment and your productivity. Imagine importing those business priorities, those strategic imperatives into a pocket coach where everyone now knows what they need to be focused on. You can upload your own milestones and what it takes to achieve those goals. And one thing we didn't talk about, but under the hood, are talent development shortcuts. So for every behavioral profile, you know how to best inspire, coach, and develop each and communicate with each of your team members, all at your fingertips. So as I mentioned, you can do this on your own. You have talented people in your organization that have learned how to do this, and they know how to do it well. The question is, can you replicate that throughout your organization? Who's going to do that initiative? Do they have time? Do they have bandwidth? Does your organization have time to do this on your own? Or jump on to some technology and behavioral neuroscience and performance management and put it all in a bow, less than an hour, and for less than the cost of one disengaged employee, and you're off to the races. So with that said, if you are uncertain about any of these things, I'm going to drop my link to my calendar here again. You're welcome to book time on my calendar to talk through some of these things. Maybe there's some nuances that you want to discover, some things that you'd like to see. But I'd also leave you with this. There are talent optimization professionals out there. Here are the questions to ask. A, has your system or your approach been validated in studies in the application that you want to use it in? So if you're going to use this in hiring the right person for the right role, is your solution validated in the hiring setting? Is it validated in coaching people? Is it validated in aligning a talent strategy with the business strategy? Is it validated to diagnose the underpinnings and undercurrents of what may be going on in your organization? So those are the key things to ask. And if they can't show that they've been validated, then it might just be more of an informal application, and you may not get the same type of results that we've showcased here and that are in the 2022 State of Talent Optimization report that we dropped the link in earlier in the presentation. So with that said, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'd be happy to take your questions. While we're doing that, I'm going to leave this up for you so that you have the QR code to my calendar, our website, retainmyteam.com, and my direct email, which I don't give out all that often. All right, let's see what kind of questions that we have coming in. I see we have some of my fan base. Thank you for joining me. I see some familiar names on the call routinely, things that I do, webinars and open chats. So always glad to see folks continuing to learn and explore talent optimization. I got one question here. So how can talent optimization be used in the hiring setting? That's always an outstanding question. In the hiring setting, what we often do is we hire people based on their skills and experience and likability. Likability meaning AKA culture fit. We go one step, two layers deeper in helping to identify who is the right person for the right role. The example that I like to give is a salesperson. So you may have a product that's first in class, never been seen, you're forging a new market. It's going to require cold calls and explaining something that people have never seen before. These types of people, salespeople, like to eat what they kill. They like to come in, they like to make the sale and move on to the next one. Another type of salesperson likes to be in an established account, maybe with an established product, and they like to nurture those relationships to go deeper and wider in an account and be part of the team. Now, could those two salespeople succeed if you switched the scenario? They'll probably do fine, but it'll be a lot of work. It won't be as fun for someone to be in, this hunt and kill mentality and have to see the same people all the time and bring them along slowly will drive them crazy. Vice versa, the other person will be paralyzed. Like, you're going to go make me talk to strangers about something they don't know about? Oh, no. And they'll do it, but it'll be harder.
I think this is great. And the cost of not having the right culture and the right people, it's very expensive. It truly is. And I think, having the right people in the right positions is truly important. In startups, we always talk about, you wear many hats, which is true. But as you grow, you want to delegate as much as you can, put the right people in the right position for what they're really, really good at, and put them in a position to succeed on a personal level, but also to help the company achieve their goals. It's a win-win. It should always be a win-win. And I think a big part of what you covered today, and my takeaway is, you're always trying to figure out where's the win-win, right? How do you work with your team to ensure that you're hitting their personal goals and you're helping them, but you're also incorporating their personal goals into the company goals? And everything you talked about today really makes me understand that. Really, it reinforced it for me in a significant way. And it's like it's like a football team, right? You can't have your center trying to play quarterback. You have to have the right people in the right positions to win. And we've all been guilty of, like, oh, well, you just go do it over there, right? And it's like, even if you can't do it, and I've tried myself many times to do things that I'm not good at, and typically you end up wasting a lot of time, because we all have certain skill sets that naturally come to us. And these things really, really help us to achieve on a personal level, but to also help the company push forward. And I do think, probably my biggest takeaway is always, how do you create that team environment, and how do you have great communication, so everybody is really, really, winning. And so win-win is just the biggest part of any great culture, and you have to have it, especially in a smaller company that's growing, to really succeed, right?
Absolutely. Great insights there, John. We have a really good question from Jay, and he's asking about the role of the managers in implementing some of these various aspects. And so I'm going to back up on the slides for just a moment here to get this real visual going. So the manager, this does not in any way, shape, or form take the place of the manager. It's a tool. It's a hack for the manager to do right by their teammates or their team members in a better, faster, more effective, and sustainable way. So one of the opportunities is that literally this system that we have gives you a shortcut to how to engage, inspire, and challenge each one of your team members and communicate with them better. But also, all right, one of the biggest cries from employees today is, we want more development. We want more development. What do those conversations look like? Often it's, hey, John, what would you like to work on for your professional development? Well, Ronda, I'm not really sure. Maybe presentation skills? Oh, that sounds good, John. Yeah, you present a lot. Why don't you go take that course and do that thing over there? Where does that help you meet your business objectives?
Right.
Yep. So instead, the manager can be looking at maybe this person, MH, and we know the business priorities over here, and this person needs to stretch to help. So you can look at what work needs to be done and what skills they need to build or experience they need to build in order to help you meet this objective. Just knowing that your development is largely free. Unless there's something externally that you need to help support that. Now you make your talent development dollars, you get exponential ROI out of your talent development dollars.
Absolutely. And I think that's results-oriented strategy. right? Where you're thinking about it, not from the perspective, well, what would you like to do? It's really more about what do you need to do that's going to get the desired result, that's going to help you achieve your goals, help the company achieve their goals. So what is the specific area of focus that you need to work on that is going to get the desired result? And I think a lot of people, they don't really think about it that way, right? And you have to think about it from the perspective of results, because at the end of the day, most board of directors, most investors, most people don't really care anything more than, they just want results. They care about results, and that's pretty much it. Right?
That's right. And imagine too, so while you're getting more results, you are reducing that hemorrhage of disengagement because you're engaging people towards a purpose. And that's another thing we're hearing employees are wanting. They want a purpose. What better way to set their sights on purpose?
It's everything's about purpose, right? I mean, and you, Ronda, my story. I sold 2 companies and tried to retire, and it was horrible, and I had no purpose. And that's the thing, is that, when you put a team together, everybody is fighting for a common cause, and that's your purpose together. And so much of this is about that. And it's really about, these are incredible tools to get to that place. And they're incredibly valuable. And you did a great job, Ronda.
Thank you so much. I have one more example from the Q&A that I just had this conversation this morning, actually, with someone that we're working with. And I think it's a very valid point. What do you do when you have your current team, you do this and you find someone who you suspected, but now is not well suited for the job? And I just had this conversation this morning. So when we mapped her team, a large part of what they do is customer facing, customer interaction. And so a lot of their business priorities lie over here. And there's a person on her team that she inherited. And when we mapped it, she lives over here. And as I mentioned, it's harder for someone to go across the quadrants versus being adjacent. What do I do with that person? And in her world, this person is in the glide path to be moved out of the organization. That's always a horrible spot for both parties. And it doesn't have to happen, because if you have the behavioral assessments for all of your employees, there's another segment where you map each job and you get the profiles that are best suited for those jobs. You can back up a step and say, where would she be better suited in the organization? Now you can have a neutral conversation based on her own strengths, where she'll be happiest. She doesn't have to leave the company. Let's just move her to a place where she's going to be better suited to do work better. Right. And that feels better for everybody. So in closing, again, if you'd like to have a follow-up conversation, book a meeting with me, one-on-one talent strategy session. We can take a look at your team, do a free trial of your area where you're finding the biggest pinch point, and then we'll just take the conversation from there. So thank you everyone for joining us today. John, thank you so much for your contributions and for being here. Have a good rest of the week.